guys, welcome back to today's video. So I'm sorry I haven't been posting much. There's not been really much mushrooms around. It's been really cold. In spring, I hope we can go on a morel hunt. I'll be super happy if I can find some morels in this moist little patch I found. But besides that, today we're going to be going over my dried mushroom collection. I have a lot of them, but I'm only going to do a select few because I have like way too many. So some of them are actually from West Virginia because I went there and I was like, oh, look at these cool mushrooms. And so I'm not sure of identification of them. But yeah, so let's get into it. The first mushroom we have is the rooted zarula. So this mushroom kind of looks plain. It can be anything from if you just look like this. The cap is usually really dark colored, but again, it looks darker whenever you dry it. Well, not again, but it looks darker whenever you dry it. The stem's really brittle, it snaps really easily, but the real identification gem is whenever you dig up this specimen with a knife because they're very delicate. It has a little taproot, almost like a carrot, and no other mushroom has that. Well, there might be a couple, but this, is the rooted zarula if you see that. This species is edible. But again, I didn't eat it because it was old whenever I found it. I enjoy drying mushrooms to be able to preserve them. It has really wavy gills that are really hard to see, but you can kind of see them a little bit on the side there. They usually have a white stem. They're decent tall. They're about that size. Sometimes they can be a little bit shorter, a little bit taller. It varies. They usually grow in grassy areas, not so much woods. But that's pretty much all for this mushroom. Sadly, I lost a taproot whenever I dug it up because it fell off. But anyway, to the next mushroom. We have the tough-skinned puffball. So this is technically not a puffball, it's an earth ball, which is a little bit different. And I'll explain why here in a little bit. So this, I think, is a really easy beginner's mushroom because there is a parasitic bolete that grows on it, and it's edible, and you are able to, I forget the name of it, but it grows on the tough-skinned puffball, and it's super easy, so you know both of the mushrooms because it only grows on the tough-skinned puffball. But one of the characteristics is it has really tough skin, so you gotta feel that. It's like really tough. These are mildly poisonous, so don't eat them. I only got it for educational purposes. But it's like, it has these like almost like little dots on there, and it's like, they look, I don't know how to explain it. It almost kind of looks like someone poked like a little hole in them. But see this little stem here? That's a characteristic of an earth ball. Meanwhile, in the next specimen I'll show puffball. But these actually, they hold some spores. If you crush them, they will release a bunch of spores, and then that's how puffballs reproduce. So on to the next mushroom. So this is a pear-shaped puffball. So this mushroom is a little bit different than the tough-skinned puffball. So this is actually an earth ball, like I said. The reason you can tell this is a puffball is because of the really long connection here. Meanwhile, this just has a little taproot. They look, well, not a taproot, but like a little tiny little root. So they look a bit different. This is a pear-shaped puffball, and they are actually edible, but I don't want to eat it now because it's already dried and it's a little bit disgusting. I was really happy about getting this specimen because it actually has little mycelium strands on it, which is what feeds the mushrooms. But it makes them grow, and I was really happy to be able to get a sample of that. Mycelium comes in all colors, but most of the time it's white. It doesn't just make mushrooms grow, it makes everything grow. But it's like, if you dig under the ground, you're going to find mycelium. You have to dig a little bit deep sometimes, but with mushrooms, you can find it pretty much right there. So, again, if you squish this, spores will come out, but I don't want to do that, obviously, because I'd like to try to keep this in as best shape as possible. Next up, we have a really popular mushroom, the fly mushroom, also known as fly agaric. These mushrooms are so popular, but they are poisonous. You will see them on towels, salt and pepper shakers, pictures. They're known as the red and white little toadstool. So these are actually an agaricus, a type of agaricus species. You can see the ring that broke a little bit, but they're usually really tough. Some different species you can actually slide the ring up and down. But these are like really tough on, but I did accidentally break them whenever I was getting them. They also have a little cup. This one I lost whenever I got it. I actually found these in somebody's yard, and I was like, oh, can I get these? And they were like, yeah, sure. They had lots of them. The gills are a little bit hard to see, but they kind of have, like, they're not too widely spaced, and there are a lot of them. So a cool thing about these, if you have a fresh fly mushroom, take the cap off, put it in a little bowl of milk, and then the flies will be attracted to it, and then you won't have any flies because it'll kill them. So these mushrooms may smell a little bit, depends on where you're getting them from. So in this eastern area, and the East Coast, these are more common in like yellowish orange, not so much the red, but the red is like the most popular. Like everybody has something toadstool, something or another. Like I constantly make like these little like pencil toppers that have like these little dots on them out of pipe cleaners, but pretty much everybody's going to have something. So these are a really popular mushroom, but if you find it, take a picture, leave it alone. I have it only for educational purposes. It is poisonous. I will be washing my hands very good after this. On to the next one. We have a really small mushroom, but they can actually get quite big. I one time found one, it was like this big around, and I was like, holy crap, this thing's huge. But it was really rotted because bugs had gotten to it. That's unfortunate. These are poisonous. Again, these will make you throw up. They're not too bad. Oh yes, like I said, the fly mushroom is mildly poisonous. It'll give you gastrointestinal upsets, stomach upsets. Tough skin puffball will also give you stomach upsets as well. This, you can easily identify this mushroom for the most part. Sometimes it can be mistaken for a brick top, which is actually a really edible mushroom that you can find whenever other mushrooms are not around. It's usually in the wintertime. But they have a bright red cap and an all white stem. They can vary from really little to quite long. I don't know if I said the name. These are an emetic russula. It says in most of my books that russulas are, like, it's mentioned some that are edible, but we avoid all because we're not sure because some people have gotten sick from them. So these are some really small specimens, so I'm going to try to show as best as I can. But, so if you see the brightly colored mushroom, usually it means leave it alone, except for brick tops. There's a few other examples I can't think off the top of my head, but so if you see brightly colored, usually leave it alone unless you want to identify it. But remember, don't eat any mushroom that you just randomly find in the woods. You have to be 100% sure of identification because I don't want anybody getting hurt. I don't want anybody getting sick. Like the destroying angel, it destroys your kidneys and liver, so you'd be dead if you don't get a kidney transplant. So that's how dangerous the world of mushrooms can be sometimes. On to the next one. So this is my second to last mushroom I'll be showing. This is a mica cap. So these are actually related to inky caps, which I do have a dried specimen of. I'm just not going to get it out right now. But they're really hard. So spore print is basically whenever you put the cap on a piece of paper, gill side down. So it would be like how it is on the stem. And you would make sure that it's on there for, sometimes it takes up to a week, but usually 1 to 2 days, 2 to 3, depends on the mushroom. But then it will leave a colored spore print, and that's a really good way of identification. Back to mica caps. So these are related to inky caps. They have a self-digesting process. They don't release spores like most mushrooms. Their spores are actually like in their gills, like most mushrooms. But they will digest themselves, and then it turns into this black like paste, and it'll whenever the rain comes, it'll wash it all away and spread it everywhere and make it bounce. And that's how inky caps, mica caps, shaggy manes, other examples that I can't think of, that's how they reproduce. They don't do spores. Well, the spores are technically in the liquid, but they don't release them into the air. They just a characteristic of the mica cap, it's usually light brown. It breaks really easily. Its gills are like really slightly attached to the stem at the very top. It whenever it's young, it has these little flakes that kind of look like scales on it, but they wash off after a good rain. These are an edible species, but I don't recommend it because if they're older, then they liquefy in the pan, turn into this black paste. It's edible, but it's not very appetizing. So I actually found these in my backyard. I found a huge clump of them, but I don't trust them because we have dogs, and I would not trust mica caps. But so if you find these, you remember, be sure of identification, but they are edible as long as they're young. On that note, let's go to the next one. So this is the final mushroom, but it's not actually a mushroom. That was a trick. It's actually a slime mold, which is a bit different than mushrooms and funguses. They're kind of like this, usually like a little round ball, and if you squeeze it, this little like this, I don't know how to explain it, it's like a liquid that comes out. So I found these. They're super duper hard to see. See those like orange dots? Those are all the little slime molds. I could not get a branch off this, a good branch. This is the best I could get off of this. But they're like these tiny little orange dots. And they're super duper hard to see. But you can kind of see them faintly there, I hope. But those are actually slime molds. I'm not going to go in depth with slime molds because that's a whole different separate thing than mushrooms. There are a lot of different slime molds. I have Zit of the Woods, which is what I call it. It's actually wolf's milk. It's a pink slime mold, but it pops whenever you touch it. It's quite fun. I don't know of any slime molds that are poisonous, but none are actually edible. They're not exactly what you would want to eat. But so that's the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from this, and remember, always be certain of identification before harvesting a mushroom. Smell what it feels like, what it looks like, spore print, lots of other things too. You have to make sure. But on that note, that's it. Goodbye, guys. Have a wonderful day.